Okay, so welcome to another episode of This Week in Overwatch, where we discuss all the happenings in and around the Overwatch ecosystem, often on social media, Reddit, and of course on just general news, starting with more layoff news. Now, if you've been keeping even remotely in touch with what's been happening in the Overwatch world, you will know that I think about a week ago or a few days ago, the organization of Microsoft laid off 1,900 employees in the Xbox and Activision companies. So it was a huge, sweeping, devastating series of layoffs that have kind of carved their way through everything to do with the umbrella that Microsoft owns now. And I'm sure you've heard all about the first series of layoffs. We will discuss more of those in a second. But today, just now, just before I went live, a new wave of layoffs has come through on the esports side of Overwatch and also just the wider Activision ecosystem. Zoe, I'm sure I don't need to explain who Zoe is. Those of you who even vaguely kept in touch with Overwatch will know Zoe, the caster, the host, just the all-round lovely personality, analyst, who has been pretty much the face of Overwatch League on the production side since its beginning. She has announced that she's been let go by Blizzard. So she says, after 7 years of service, I've just been laid off by Blizzard. It was a dream come true to work there, and I'm saddened that my time was cut short. Yes, I was ready for this call with champagne. You can see the champagne in the back. Gotta celebrate the good times and opportunities I had. What's next? I am available. So she's obviously saying that she's still looking for work, and underneath people send her congratulations. Ironically, she's got, all this Overwatch merch as well. She's got a little Overwatch glass, a Bob t-shirt. So you can obviously, anyone who knows Overwatch knows her dedication to the scene. She's a really, really lovely person, and she's just been a really unequivocally bright space in the Overwatch sphere. So laying her off, it hits hard, and I'm going to talk more about that in a second, but first I have to add that also let go of is Matt Mr. X, who writes, unfortunately today, along with a lot of other amazing esports folks, I've been let go from Blizzard. Casting Overwatch and working behind the scenes, planning some of the best years we've had with Overwatch esports, and the upcoming year with the new Overwatch champion scene, if I remember correctly, the acronym OWCS, or Champion Series, was a dream come true. Hopefully, I can still stay involved with the Overwatch scene in the future, but if anyone wants to chat production, talent work, email is in the bio. Mr. X has been let go of, and Zoe has been let go of. Both, at this point, basically pillars of the Overwatch pro scene. And if you're wondering why these two in particular, this is where I can perhaps provide a little bit of insight to those who don't know what their roles were at Blizzard. So Mr. X was actually worked formally in the esports side of Overwatch League. I can't remember his exact title, but he was essentially like a manager for the Overwatch League and everything to do with pro Overwatch esports. So he was actually where you might not have heard, for example, Custa and Reinforce and Jake talk about being laid off or anything like that, because those guys are freelancers essentially, right? Even as analysts, they're not contracted by Blizzard full time in that sense, right? They're only there for the Overwatch League season. So of course, as the Overwatch League ends, they're free to pursue whatever they want, and they were never in a formal contract type situation, to my understanding. I haven't actually spoken to them about it. I would imagine they were classified as freelancers, like the casters, like Lemon Kiwi and Leg Day and all those guys. They would all be freelancers who are being hired to perform on the Overwatch League. And now the Overwatch League doesn't exist, they don't have a formal role within Blizzard. Whereas for Mr. X and for Zoe, they were actually formally a part of Blizzard. So Mr. X, like I said, was doing all that esports stuff, and Zoe was, as you've seen, actually part of all their announcements. She was often hosting other things. I think she was there at BlizzCon for a little bit, on the stage, and you would see her in any sort of promotional video that Blizzard would put out and dev talks and stuff. So I think the reason these two are giving these formal announcements of being laid off is because they were actually employed by Blizzard full-time, unlike some of the other casters. I don't think it's a case that these two are being specifically targeted by Microsoft to be let go of. It's just that these two were the faces of the full-time esports employment. I don't know what this means for the rest of the esports. Are they gonna essentially, what's the word, cut and burn? Are they gonna cut the whole forest down and start from scratch? Are we never gonna see Reinforce and Jake and Custa and all those guys turn up on the analysis panels, even when we have those finals? Because obviously we're gonna have in the Overwatch or the OWCS, we're gonna have these smaller tournaments, but they're also gonna be these two big LAN events. So are we not gonna see those familiar faces at the LAN events, or will they just hire them as freelancers? I don't know. I suspect that they might not know, because I don't know if that has been formalized yet. And some of the people who might know, like Mr. X, he's now been let go of himself. So I guess this puts either Bailey, who has been the head of a lot of Overwatch esports, as the person to talk to about this, or maybe they're gonna hire someone new in. I'm gonna guess they're gonna implant someone new into these positions as their Microsoft appointment, just as even if nothing else, it's just a power move to show that they are changing things for their own direction. But I think just as with all the layoffs, they're sucky, and these two in particular really hurt because these two were just really, really lovely people who were doing their best for Overwatch Esports, have done a lot of great stuff. A lot of Overwatch Esports problems was never really the management of the production and the management of Overwatch League. It was the fundamental problems that the Overwatch League's construction had in the first place. The franchise model that Overwatch League came with is pretty much the problem and the reason it fell down, alongside Overwatch's own problems, right? Alongside the problems that Overwatch had with just losing hype and impetus and balance and the wait for Overwatch 2. But the production was always great. The management of the esports was always great. I know a lot of other people involved with Overwatch League, like the observers, have been let go of as well today. And so once more, we find ourselves in a position where the Overwatch ecosystem is reeling from the Microsoft deal, and namely the layoffs. And this goes beyond just Blizzard as well. So this is Scott Parkin, who was the senior manager of esports operations for Activision Blizzard. And he tweets, "They did it. They actually did it. They let us work with that over our heads and laid us off on our first day off. The lack of common decency is a joke." So again, I think if you're struggling to empathize, which I hope you're not, but I know there's always some people out there who are struggling to empathize with the layoffs. And again, sadly, a lot of this episode will have to talk about the layoffs because that is the big news right now and the relevant news that we should talk about within the Overwatch and Activision ecosystem. This is an example of just how bad it often gets and is in the corporate ecosystem of that gaming has kind of become dominated by, because what Scott is suggesting here is that a lot of the people on the esports side of things were basically asked to work, not sure if they'd be laid off or not. And I understand that there's a lot of people in Blizzard who are in a similar situation where they're not. I don't think many people at Blizzard yet know that they're not getting fired. Like, there's a lot of people still who are unsure if they might be getting fired. And so it seems they made the esports people work under the uncertainty whether they were going to get let go of or not. And then the day off that they had. So he says the first day that they had off. So presumably today or yesterday were like the first day. I'm going to guess today being Tuesday. You might be watching this at a future date, but Tuesday, the 30th of January, it seems this was their day off, and that's when they went, okay, they're not working anymore, give them the can. Which is like doubly shitty, right? It's like, it's one thing to lay people off when you've come in and you're like, I want to lay people off, but then to squeeze out like another 3 or 4 days worth of labor from them, and then the minute they have a day off, then you're like, now you're let go of. That's like extra scummy, and that's like an extra kick in the boots, and that's just uncalled for. Like, that's unethical, that lacks human decency, and that's kind of what Scott Parkin is getting at here. Not to lay on this point too thick, but so far the Microsoft takeover is not started on a great foot. Now, I will talk in a minute on what potential benefits it might bring, but it would be crass and rude of me to not first criticize the callousness of the whole act, right? We're going to talk about what good things it could do for Overwatch, but so far their handling has been very crass, very inhumane. Even their appointment of the Blizzard new president, which you will be seeing in a separate video. We're going to discuss the appointment of the Blizzard new president in a separate video, but even that, being an Activision stooge, is not very encouraging for what the direction of Overwatch and Blizzard as a whole could and will be. So we're just gonna go over a few more layoff relevant things, which is, this is Jorge Murillo, who was the senior designer for Overwatch. He's lamenting what's happened here. So he says, "I'm getting past the mourning phase and entering my pissed off stage. Overwatch layoffs didn't care about tenure, skill, performance, how expensive you were, how new you were, if you just moved out, if you just had a baby, the same day's a layoff." So I think a lot of the growing sentiment is that the firing is almost random. Like, it almost seems like there's no discernible pattern to it. A lot of really hard-working people are let go of. Some senior people, some not so senior people. There definitely has been a concerted attack on the hierarchy, seemingly, because another person affected by the layoffs is Gavin Fury, who was the lead narrative designer for Overwatch. So the voice line interactions that you hear in-game, Gavin was the leader of that team. You will have seen him in a couple of the interviews that they did in the build-up to Overwatch 2 when they were talking about like what they were doing. Gavin was visibly present in some of the videos, and he says, "My time with the legendary Overwatch team ended today with the recent round of layoffs. I'm so proud of what my team and I have accomplished. Now it's time to find my next dream project. Let me know if you see one." Now, Gavin has always been a lovely and cheerful guy. If you've ever followed him on social media, somehow, despite whatever crap people throw at him, you know, as people do in replies to tweets made by devs of the games they quote-unquote like, people are very vicious. He's always got a very polite and chipper demeanor and seems to just be really enjoying life. Obviously, this is a hard time to do so, but he still managed to find a way to come across as very, you know, upbeat. But this should give you an idea that, like, a lot of people who aren't really to blame for any of Overwatch's problems are being let go, right? Like, I don't think anyone would ever be like, "Oh yeah, you know what Overwatch's problem was? Those voice line interactions in the middle of the game, those were really shitty." techie, right? Or just like a senior designer. Like these aren't the people who are responsible for the things that we may criticize about Overwatch. All of us have had grievances with Overwatch, right? But these are not the people who are responsible for any of it. They're just like people doing a specific job in the technical elements of the game, right? It's just like they make levels, or they make the hero models, or they write some voice lines. So for them to be let go of, again, just suggests that there's like a Blaze approach to sacking people in the Overwatch team and in Blizzard overall. And what it reminds me of, since we're reading all these on Twitter, and I refuse to call it X. Since we're reading all of these on Twitter, it reminds me of a story that was shared about Elon Musk soon after the takeover that he made went through for Twitter. And the story was that basically he was going around visiting the various offices of Twitter. Amongst the workers, this thing spread, this like idea spread, that when Elon turns up, he will fire someone, right? And what it turns out is that Elon Musk had this idea in his head that it was like one of these alpha male power moves, that if you walk into the office and you sack someone, like you just fire someone for like basically no reason, right? Just for a show of power, it will make the other workers like work better because they'll be scared of being let go. So very, very cruel, horrendous, callous, dystopian levels of like upper management, right? Where it's like, I'm just gonna make an example of this human being, right? I'm just gonna ruin this human being's life potentially, right? Just let them go for no reason, just to make like a point in a statement to keep them on their toes. And the funny thing is though, this is more just a indication of how little anyone respects Elon Musk, and not this part isn't transferable to the Overwatch section. But the funny thing is that the employees at Twitter knew this was gonna happen, and what they would do is the bosses of those office headquarters would let Elon come in and fire someone, and then the minute he leaves, they would rehire them. They would just be like, you're not really fired, because they knew Elon didn't know a clue about anything of what was happening, right? He didn't know who the employee was. He wouldn't even know what they were doing. He wouldn't remember their name or their face the day after. He was just coming in to make a statement and be like, you're fired, and then walk away. So at all the offices around like the Twitter ecosystem, they knew that Elon would come in and fire someone, and then you just gotta like pretend to be sad, and you'd be like, oh no, I've been fired. And then once he leaves, the boss would be like, it's fine, just carry on with your job. Some of this kind of reminds me of that same type of vibe, where I wonder if Microsoft's approach is just like, we just gotta come in and let go of a bunch of people so that it'll show that we are in control now and we are in charge now, and this is the Microsoft era, not the Activision era. And the irony is that in the new president appointment that they've made for Blizzard, Johanna Faries, they've hired someone who is an Activision person, right? Who's like served as general manager of Call of Duty. So if the idea was that we're gonna come in and we're gonna let go a bunch of people and start a new era, well, it seems like a bit of an ironic move to then like appoint someone as the leader of Blizzard who wasn't even from Blizzard, but was from Activision, the worst side of the Activision Blizzard conglomerate. Overall, it seems like the Microsoft takeover has started off in a really bad foot. Of course, this is not going to define the Microsoft's era. Like, we're just beginning, and who knows what their plans are. It may be that in 2 years from now, they have created a wonderful ecosystem of Activision Blizzard King games. But this is a pretty quick way to burn all the goodwill that came, or any goodwill that came with the merger. I won't say all the goodwill because some people were skeptical from the go, but a lot of people, like myself, were quietly optimistic that maybe this would represent an upgrade from Bobby Kotick, right? That this would represent, if nothing else, less cruel treatment of the workers at Activision Blizzard. And yet, what we've seen so far is that the treatment is as cruel. Maybe an order down because it's not so personally spiteful as Bobby Kotick was, but still incredibly callous, as, you know, this tweet shows us. Incredibly callous, incredibly cynical, manipulative, heartless, right? Just every adjective you could think of in that sphere has been typified of the approach that Microsoft has taken off the rip, which is to leave people hanging on the whether they're actually still working for the company they work for or not, indiscriminately fire people, and then do it in a way that continues to milk their labor for literally the last second you possibly could before firing them anyways. And again, as Jorge points out, it's like they didn't care if you moved to California for this job specifically, right? Because remember, before the end of the Microsoft, or before the end of the Activision era, they were starting to force people to come work at the office in person. And so they don't care if you just moved. If you just were like, okay, I'm going to come over to California, and now you're let go of living in a fairly expensive city, very expensive city. They don't care if, like, you know, if you're really well respected in the team, as again, a lot of these guys were. Gavin, like, the narrative team is like completely distraught from what I can tell, like with Gavin's being let go of. It just feels haphazard and arbitrary the way they've done this. In terms of potential good, and again, I wanted to qualify this with my criticisms of what has just happened, because I don't want it to be confused that in any way we should be celebrating any of these, because that's not at all how it should be viewed. It should be viewed as a tragedy and like just the approach of it. Because again, it is okay to lay people off, but the cruelty with which it was done, and again, the randomness with which it was done is not right. If Microsoft truly wishes to start a new era, if they truly wish to erase the mistakes of Activision Blizzard and start afresh, then they are essentially making an almost new team now, right? Like with so many layoffs, with such a large section of Activision Blizzard being let go of, seemingly. It's hard to know the exact like specifics of which team has how many people laid off. With so many people gone, it will inevitably be a new look team in every department of Activision Blizzard, right? Potentially, it could get better. I'm just trying to be somewhat devil's advocate about it. It could get better, but I also, again, want to emphasize that it doesn't feel to me like the problems were these people. The problems weren't these guys being let go of. The problem was Bobby Kotick. The problem was some of the big picture decisions that were made. At least if we talk specifically for Overwatch, I can't speak too strongly on what was happening in World of Warcraft or whatever, although that seems to be on the up, and Call of Duty, which seems to be on the down, which again is a little bit alarming with Johanna Ferries, but anyways, maybe it wasn't her fault. But in Overwatch's case, it was just big picture decisions that they made that was the reason it went bad. Like, you can't say that Overwatch was like a glitchy, buggy game, for example, right? That's not a criticism you can label it Overwatch. Of course, it has a few bugs, as any live service game would have. By comparison, and I'm gonna show you a very funny comparison in a second. By comparison, it was pretty well played. It always like ran smoothly. It always worked well. It looked great. The skins are still great. The character designs are still great. And then even the new heroes, whatever we may argue about their balance, their looks and their character feel and their backstories are all amazing. So none of that was ever the problem for Overwatch. It just felt like it needed a cohesive and, smart direction and some resources backing it to allow that to be fulfilled. So I don't really think that this is gonna solve the quote-unquote problems on its own. Some people might be like, oh, this is their chance to now correct some wrongs. I think that's there's like a no overlap in the sense of if they are going to correct the wrongs, this isn't necessarily the way to do it. For those who don't know as well, Blizzard has been working for like many years. I think like 6 years on a survival game. So this was like very hush-hush as to the details of it. But for a while, there's been like job postings and you've seen rumors and not even rumors. We know that it was happening, that they were making a survival game in the, Warcraft Blizzard ecosystem. And that entire team has been laid off. So the entire survival project has been scrapped as well. So if you were at all vaguely excited by that idea or were hoping for a new, fresh entry in the Blizzard world, that's gone now too. So just a tough time to be working at Activision Blizzard or even the games industry as a whole. Now, speaking on the buggy side, in the interest of grass is not always greener, I'm going to show you a clip that demonstrates the chaos that's going on in the Apex Legends world right now. So this is the new configs debacle that is running rampant through Apex at the moment, which is that people are using Steam configs to basically create cheats in Apex Legends that are essentially in a way legitimate because they're just done through Steam. And this is a prominent Apex creator, His Watson, who shares the state of ranked Apex Legends.
The no recoil jitter aim config that I've made.
And I'm just gonna play this video. I mean, the audio is not really even relevant. The relevant parts are what you can see here, which is that they've essentially just made budget hacks where there's no recoil, there's no you're just basically aimbotting, right? No strafe this one is showing. So you're just fully aimbotting on this guy. Armor swap, which is again in Apex Legends, it's a skill and it's like a necessary thing, is that you want to quickly swap your armor with someone in a loot box because you might be, you're kind of in a fight, you've lost your armor and there's a dead body near you from someone you've killed, but there's also other people you need to fight, so you quickly need an armor to swap to. And this one is straight up aim hacks, which is 180 flick. Like, that's just straight up aim hacks. Easy super glides, another movement tech. Basically, it's making the movement tech easier. So essentially, they've just created ways to autoplay Apex Legends. And already, Apex had problems with the aim assist. And you can see since this config has been programmed on Steam, it is undetectable. Basically, a lot of games are not having a good time. So already people were upset about the controller versus keyboard diff. And now you basically just have perma aimbot for everything. The desert-based Apex Legends don't know what they're doing. These numbers should be in an encrypted database or the part of the connecting to the server. I can't comment on the technicalities of it. I don't know. I don't understand. But as you can see, it is bad. The outcome, I can comment on the outcome, which is that it's bad. So at this point, a lot of you will be watching this video and asking, what about the leaks, SVB? Are you going to talk about the leaks? So let me just quickly address the leak stuff here, which is that I will not be discussing the leaks on my stream or in this video, which you'll be watching later. And there's a couple of reasons why. Firstly, I just think in general, discussing leaks is bad faith and unethical. I think on a human level, and just as a game and any game developer, if you're working on something, or if you're just anyone who works on anything, if you're working on something and you eventually need to put it out to the public, and it's going to be a big thing, you know, people are going to be commenting on it, people are going to be like very closely watching how it's going to be received, and then someone through basically illegal means obtains the item and puts it out before it's ready, usually to make you look worse, right? Or sometimes just to feed a demand and get a few, you know, that person will get a few clicks, they'll get a few whatever, a little bit of money. Your work is completely infringed upon, right? It's potentially ruined. Like sometimes we've seen in the past with like GTA leaks, for example, stuff that's in very early development gets leaked. It's not ready, but people make judgments on it. It's like it's a work in progress and people make judgments on it and they write off entire games based off of like early footage. In the case of something like Overwatch, it might not be accurate. It might not be the final version. You know, there may be many iterations on it, but now it kind of colors the reception of this thing. And of course, it also ruins any potential hype and surprise that you might bring when you drop it, right? Like if you're gonna make big changes, the leaks suggest big changes. And of course, if you want to find the leaks, you can. I would simply say don't. If any of these arguments that I'm gonna make are compelling to you, don't. Just wait. It's really not that big a deal because you're not gonna get to play those heroes right now anyways. Just wait till the season comes out and we know for real what they actually are. If you were like making big sweeping changes to your game and about to launch it for real, for full, and then someone kind of undercuts all that, it sucks. And doubly so it sucks right now in light of everything we've just discussed. All the layoffs that we just discussed. It is obviously a very bad time for Team 4 and Blizzard and Activision, right? And I think if your wider sense of morality is not compelled by just not engaging with leaks in general, maybe right now you can make that exception, because just think about how fucking hard it must be to be a developer at Team 4 Blizzard right now, right? You're like watching all your friends get laid off relentlessly. You maybe are worried about your own job. And on top of that, any shred of hype that you were trying to build for your new big season that's going to kind of re-kick off people's interest with this competitive change and a bunch of potential balance changes, which again, I don't know. I don't participate in any of like the NDA stuff. I don't participate in the like preview access to servers. So I can't even tell you whether this is like legit or fake. But regardless, if you were trying to make big changes to Overwatch and people were like ruining that, basically, I think it would suck a lot at this time more than others. So I'm not going to be talking about the leaks. TLDR. If other people want to, that's fine. But I would simply say, show some ethics at a time like this, right? I would always try and conduct myself and my content as ethically as I can, you know, within reason. And I simply ask, try and keep any sense of morality about you for something that isn't really gonna, it's nothing, there's no gains here. It's just reading a few patch notes that you'll find out in a couple weeks anyways. I think it's different for me as a random writer compared to the decorum expected of USAB. Not really. Ultimately, everyone engages in whatever they want. I mean, I'm gonna go on a tangent. This is like a wider thing. This is simply a micro example of a wider systemic problem that we're gonna have to deal with right now, which is that it's like non-consensual taking of other people's information, right, in various ways, or their identity. Because right now it's a patch for a game you like and you can engage in that leak, or it's leaks for GTA and you want to see what the new game that you're going to play is gonna put out. But we're also seeing an era in which AI are generating like fake porn for people, right? And while it's not the same severity of badness, it's on the same spectrum of just like unconsensually taking things from people that are theirs, or just even AI in general taking people's creative work, right? We're seeing an era where less and less the things that you should have for yourself, your identity, your ideas, like the things, the work you put out, are being taken slowly but surely by like just the internet and its vast all gobbling form. And you know, we can all participate in it, and some of us will to some extent more than others. You know, it's a slippery slope. We will kind of participate in some and maybe not others, but somewhere you got to draw the line of like, as you as an individual, where are you behaving ethically for your own morals, for nobody else's, just on your own sleep with yourself at night, right? Like just your own resting. What are you engaging in? Of course, we all have curiosity to be like, oh, I am curious what's going on. But how much do you value that curiosity versus just infringing upon another person's privacy, their rights, just their emotions as well? So you do you, and you got to figure out your own lines that you draw. I think someone's likeness is private and different from this leak. How? This is also private. There's no difference. It's simply a difference of severity. This is also private information that was presumably for whoever got it was under a contractual obligation to not be shared. That's what an NDA is, which is just like you're not a non-disclosure. This is not meant to be public. And someone went and took it out, right? And it's the same principle as like revenge porn if you think about it, right? Where it's like a thing was shared between two people privately and someone is like, fuck that, I'm sharing this to everyone. I'm putting this on the internet publicly for everyone. And so for 10 subs, I don't know the details of like, I know RuPaul leaked it and I don't know the details, but man, that's a shitty, scummy fucking move. If you wanted to blow anyone's respect for you, I just have no respect for people like that. I have less than zero respect for people like that who would behave in such ways. Yeah, I can't even understand what was going on in his mind. Shallowness of depth of the thought process to be just like, yeah, let's just put it out here. The judicial person versus private person, I think they're fundamentally different. I don't think corpos are people, but if you feel attached to the people that work there, but I get if you feel attached to the people who work there. They are people, whether you choose to see them as not, like, whether you choose to see them as such or not. Like, I can understand having a sense of like corporate apathy because yeah, fuck corporations. But this isn't like I stole a $10 voucher for Microsoft. This isn't a corpo thing. This is literally just a team of developers are balancing your game and you're taking that information beforehand. So this isn't, I don't think this is a scenario where you can like absolve yourself by being like, oh, it's just corpos. I don't care about the corpos. Because this isn't a corpo nameless, faceless organization. This is like a very clear, you know exactly who this is. You know exactly where this comes from.